will talk about the peritoneum and the peritoneal attachments and spaces. The peritoneum is continuous membrane which lines the abdominal cavity and covers the abdominal organs. It acts to support the viscera and provides pathways for blood vessels and lymph to travel to and from the viscera. The peritoneum consists of two layers, the visceral and parietal layers.
دكتور علي ليش طلعت من الشو؟ شو هسه هو يعني اوت اوف شو؟
اي نعم استاذ. هاي
ما يمشي يعني اذا اخليه على الشو؟
هو طلع مني يا استاذ.
هسه كمل.
Okay. The peritoneum consists of two layers, the visceral and the parietal layers, that are continuous with each other. Both types are made up of simple squamous epithelial cells called the mesothelium. The peritoneal cavity is a potential space between the parietal and visceral peritoneum. It normally contains only a small amount of lubricating fluid. The peritoneal cavity can be divided to greater and lesser peritoneal sac. The greater sac is further divided by two supracolic and infracolic compartments. This is the peritoneal cavity. Peritoneal cavity. This is the lesser sac and the greater sac. And this is the lesser omentum, greater omentum. Okay. The peritoneum, the abdominal, The abdominal viscera can be divided anatomically by their relationship to the peritoneum. There are two main groups, the intraperitoneal and retroperitoneal organs. The intraperitoneal organs are enveloped by visceral peritoneum, which covers the organ both anteriorly and posteriorly. For example, the stomach, the liver, spleen. The retroperitoneal organs are not associated with the visceral peritoneum. They are only covered by parietal peritoneum. A useful mnemonic to help in recalling which abdominal viscera are retroperitoneal is Satt-Booker. S for suprarenal, A for aorta and IVC, D for duodenum, P for pancreas, ureters, and the colon, kidneys, esophagus, and rectum. Okay. Terminology. Ligament, what's the ligament? Is formed by two folds of peritoneum that enclose a structure and named after the two structures it join. Example, the gastrohepatic and the splenorenal. The omentum is the ligament that joins the stomach to another structure. The mesentery, composed of two folds of peritoneum that attach a loop of ball to the retroperitoneum. Okay. The omenta. The omenta are sheets of visceral peritoneum that extend from the stomach, and the proximal part of the duodenum to other abdominal organs. This is the lesser omentum, the greater omentum. Okay. The greater omentum consists of 4 layers of visceral peritoneum. It descends from the greater curvature of the stomach and proximal part of the duodenum, and then fold back up and attach to the anterior surface of the transverse colon. This is the greater omentum, attached to the greater curvature of the stomach and fold back to attach to the anterior surface of the transverse colon. It has a role in immunity and is sometimes referred as the abdominal policeman because it can migrate to the infected viscera or to the site of surgical disturbance. The lesser omentum is a double-layered visceral peritoneum and is considerably smaller than the greater and attached to the lesser curvature of the stomach and the proximal part of the duodenum. Attach the greater curvature of the stomach and the proximal part of the duodenum to the liver. It consists of two parts: the hepatogastric ligament, which is the flat, broad sheet, and the hepatoduodenal ligament, which is the free edge and containing the portal triad. This picture showing us the lesser omentum is attached the lesser curvature of the stomach and the first part of the duodenum to the liver. And this is the hepatogastric ligament, which is the broad sheath, and the hepatoduodenal ligament, which is the free edge and containing the portal triad, which is the portal vein, CBD, and the hepatic artery. And this is the greater omentum. It attaches the greater curvature of the stomach to the transverse colon. Mesentery. What's the mesentery? The mesentery is a double fold of peritoneal tissue that suspends the small intestine and large intestine to the posterior abdominal wall. The mesentery has several functions in the abdomen. It suspends the small and large intestine to the posterior abdominal wall, and it provides also a conduit for blood vessels and nerves and lymphatics. The mesentery of small intestine connects the loops of the jejunum and ileum to the posterior abdominal wall and is a mobile structure. The right mesocolon is fixed against the posterior abdominal wall. The transverse mesocolon it's immobile and lies between the colic flexures. The left mesocolon is fixed against the posterior abdominal wall. The mesosigmoid has a medial portion which is fixed against the posterior abdominal wall. The mesorectum assists in anchoring the rectum to the pelvis. So all of them is fixed except the mesentery of small intestine and the transverse mesocolon. The root of the mesentery is the point where the mesentery attaches to the posterior abdominal wall and is therefore a bare area. The root of its mesentery, the root of mesentery of small bowel is long, narrow, and has an oblique orientation, extends from the left of L2 to the right sacroiliac joint, and it's about 15 cm in length. This is diagram of the posterior abdominal wall showing the posterior surface of the peritoneum. This is the bare area of the liver. We'll talk about it later. And this is the mesentery of the small bowel that's have an oblique orientation extending from the level of L2 to the right sacroiliac joint and about 15 cm in length. Vasculature. The mesentery acts as a conduit, as we said, for neurovascular structures. The superior and inferior mesenteric arteries arise from the abdominal aorta and travel in the mesentery to supply the abdominal viscera. These vessels also give rise to branches that supply the mesentery itself. The superior mesenteric artery arises from the aorta at the level of L1 and supplies the organ of the midguts, which includes the duodenum from the major duodenal papilla downward to the proximal 2/3 of the transverse colon. The major duodenal papilla is placed on the middle of the second part of the duodenum. And its a branch is the middle colic artery, right colic artery, the ileocolic artery, the ileal and jejunal arteries. The inferior mesenteric artery arises from the abdominal aorta at the level of L3 and supplies the organs of the hindgut, which includes the distal third of the transverse colon, the splenic flexure, the descending colon, the sigmoid colon, and the rectum. Its branch, marginal artery, left colic artery, sigmoid artery, and superior rectal artery. Okay. Collateral blood supply or communication between the superior mesenteric artery and the inferior mesenteric artery. عندنا الكوميونيكيشن بيناتهم هو المارجنال artery of Drummond, which is a continuous arcade along the inner aspect of the colon connecting the superior and inferior mesenteric arteries. The second one is arc of Riolan, which is a connection between the middle colic branch of the superior mesenteric artery and the left colic branch of the inferior mesenteric artery. The arc of Riolan is not always present in humans and provides an important collateral blood supply in case of celiac artery or superior mesenteric artery occlusion. This picture showing the communication between the superior and inferior mesenteric arteries. Here, the marginal artery of Drummond, which is located on the inner aspect of the colon. And this is the arc of Riolan, which is a communication between the superior middle colic artery and the inferior mesenteric artery. Okay. This is an angiography showing the communications between the superior and inferior mesenteric arteries. This is the aorta, the inferior mesenteric artery. This is the arc of Riolan. And this is the marginal artery, which is located on the inner aspect of the colon. Development of the peritoneum. In embryo, most abdominal ligaments and mesenteries are derived from remnants of ventral and dorsal mesenteries, which suspend the primitive gut. In embryo, the coelomic cavity is divided to right and left by ventral and dorsal mesenteries, so that the stomach in the middle and the liver in the ventral mesentery and the spleen in the dorsal mesentery. During development, the organs will migrate in anti-clockwise fashion so that the liver comes to the right and the spleen comes to the left. The right coelomic cavity will become the perihepatic space and the lesser sac, while the left cavity will become the left subophrenic space and the greater sac. This diagram showing this is the ventral mesentery with the liver within the ventral mesentery. This is a cross-section of the embryo during the 5th week of development. Ventral mesentery with the liver inside it, the dorsal mesentery with the spleen inside it. Then will be anti-clockwise migration so that the liver will become on the right and the spleen comes on the left. And this will become the right subophrenic space, and the lesser sac, which are the remnants of right coelomic cavity, and the general peritoneal cavity or the greater sac is a remnant of the left coelomic cavity. The dorsal mesentery give rise to the following ligaments: the Gastrocolic Ligament and the Gastrosplenic Ligaments. The Gastrocolic Ligament, this is the Gastrocolic Ligament, which is situated between the stomach and the diaphragm. The Gastrosplenic Ligament, between the stomach and the spleen. The Gastrocolic Ligament, between the stomach and transverse colon. The Splenorenal Ligament, and the Phosphorum Ligament, which is situated between the left hemidiaphragm and the splenic flexure, and is continuous with the Splenorenal Ligament. This is the Phosphorum Ligament between the colon, the splenic flexure, and the diaphragm. The ventral mesentery will give rise to the following: the falciform ligament, which is a peritoneal reflection on the anterior surface of the liver to the anterior abdominal wall. It contains the obliterated umbilical vein, and it is known as ligamentum teres, or the round ligament of the liver. The falciform ligament is continuous with the fissure for ligamentum venosum. This fissure is separate between the caudate loop and the remainder of the liver. The gastrohepatic ligament between the lesser curvature of the stomach and the porta of the liver, and this is part of lesser omentum. The hepatico-duodenal ligament between the first part of the duodenum and porta of the liver, and it's also part of the lesser omentum. This picture showing the falciform ligament, and it contains the ligamentum teres at its free edge. This is the ligamentum teres, or it's called the round ligament of the liver. And this is the fissure for ligamentum teres, fissure for ligamentum venosum, which separate the caudate loop from the remainder of the liver, and it's continuous with the round ligament and with the falciform ligament. The lesser sac and associated ligaments. The lesser sac is the remnant of the right coiloman cavity, as we said. The posterior wall of the lesser sac is formed by peritoneum over the pancreas and the left adrenal and the left kidney. The anterior wall of the lesser sac is formed by the peritoneum over the posterior wall of the stomach and the lesser omentum. It is limited laterally by the spleen, and its attached gastrosplenic and splenorenal ligaments. It communicates with the general cavity of the peritoneum by the epiploic foramen of Winslow. This picture showing the lesser sac behind the stomach, and in front of the kidney, the left adrenal, the left kidney, the left adrenal, and the pancreas. And it communicates with the greater sac by the epiploic foramen of Winslow. الباوندريز طبعا الباوندريز of the epiploic foramen هو anteriorly is the portal triad, and we'll talk about it later. The epiploic foramen, the boundaries of the epiploic foramen of Winslow posteriorly is the IBC. Anteriorly is the free edge of the lesser omentum containing the portal vein, the hepatic artery, and the CBD. Superiorly, the caudate loop of the liver. Inferiorly is the first part of the duodenum. Okay. This is a sagittal CT scan showing us the liver, and this is the fissure for ligamentum venosum, and this is the lesser omentum between the lesser curvature of the stomach and the fissure for ligamentum venosum. And this is the area of the lesser sac. This is the colon. This is the greater omentum. This is the mesocolon. And this is the small bowel mesentery. Okay. Okay. The gastrohepatic ligament, it arises in the fissure of ligamentum venosum and connect the medial aspect of the liver to the lesser curvature of the stomach. The hepatico-duodenal ligament at the free edge of the lesser omentum, and it contains the portal vein and the hepatic artery and the CBD, as we said. The gastrosplenic ligament, it connects the greater curvature of the stomach to the spleen, to the splenic hilum, and contains the short gastric vessels. As we said, this is the gastrocolic hepatic ligament or the hepatogastric ligament, which is a part of the lesser omentum. This is the hepatoduodenal ligament, which contains the portal triad and connect between the first part of the duodenum and the porta of the liver. This is the gastrocolic ligament between the stomach and the diaphragm. And this is the gastrosplenic ligament. This is the greater omentum and the gastrocolic ligament. This is the phrenicocholic ligament between the splenic flexure and the diaphragm. The gastrocolic ligament, it connects the greater curvature of the stomach to the superior transverse colon. It contains the gastroepiploic vessel to the stomach and form the superior aspect of the greater omentum. The splenorenal ligament, it running from the posterior aspect of the spleen to the left anterior pararenal space, it forms the lateral border of the lesser sac. Okay, this is the gastrosplenic ligament between the stomach and the spleen, the hilum of the spleen. And this is the gastrohepatic ligament. In asides, if the lesser sac contains fluid, a malignant process is more likely. If there's an isolated fluid in the lesser sac, is more likely to occur secondary to local pathology, for example, pancreatitis, perforated duodenal ulcer, or perforated gastric ulcer. This is an axial CT scan showing us the lesser sac. This is the lesser sac containing fluid, posterior to the stomach and anterior to the pancreas. This is the pancreas. This is the left subophrenic space, right subophrenic space. Okay. Gastric pathology may spread along the gastrocolic ligament to involve the superior aspect of the transverse colon. Pathology of the pancreatic tail may spread along the splenorenal ligament to the anterior pararenal space of the left kidney. Pathology may also spread from the porta hepatis to the falciform ligament along the fissure for ligamentum venosum. Subophrenic subhepatic spaces. The peritoneum over the liver is continuous with that of on the abdominal surface of diaphragm, except for the bare area of the liver posterior superiorly. Boundaries of the bare area of the liver, the left triangular ligament on the left, the superior and inferior coronary ligament, and the right triangular ligament on the right. These peritoneal reflections form the boundaries of the subophrenic and subhepatic spaces, which are common sites for intraperitoneal collections. The subophrenic space is partially divided to right and left by the falciform ligament. This picture showing us the bare area of the liver. This is the superior coronary ligament, the inferior coronary ligament, the right triangular ligament. This is the falciform ligament that divides the subhepatic space to right and left, and the left coronary ligament that divides the left subhepatic space into upper and lower compartments. The right triangular ligament divides the subophrenic space into two compartments. As we said, the immediate subophrenic space between the right hemidiaphragm and the right lobe of the liver, the subhepatic space posterior inferiorly between the liver and the abdominal viscera. This is the bare area of the liver, and this is the subhepatic, the subophrenic space, the right subophrenic space, and this is the subhepatic space with the hepatorenal recess, which is called the Morrison pouch, between the kidney and the liver. The posterior part of the subhepatic space between the liver and the kidney, called, as we said, Morrison pouch, and it is the deepest point on supine most dependent portion of the abdominal cavity on supine position. The anterior part of the subhepatic space is located just anterior to the porta hepatis and communicates with the lesser sac via foramen of Winslow. On the left side, there is a large combined subophrenic space comprising of 3 parts. The immediate subophrenic space between the diaphragm and the fundus of the stomach, including the area anterior to the left lobe of the liver. The Gastrocolic Ligament runs through this space, attaching the stomach to the diaphragm. The subhepatic space, it's also known as the gastrohepatic recess between the stomach and the left lobe of the liver. The perisplenic space around the spleen and is separated from the left paracolic gutter by the phrenicocholic ligament. The phrenicocholic ligament prevents the passage of fluid from the perisplenic space to the left paracolic gutter. This is an axial MRI showing the right subophrenic space, and this is the falciform ligament. This is the liver. This is the bare area of the liver, and this is the coronary ligament. Okay. This is a coronal CT scan showing us the right subophrenic space, and this is the hepatoduodenal ligament, which is anterior to the foramen of Winslow. This is the left subhepatic space. This is the gastrohepatic ligament. This is the left subophrenic space. The greater sac is the larger portion of the peritoneal cavity. It's further divided into 2 compartments by the mesentery of the transverse colon. The supracolic compartment lies above the transverse colon, above the transverse mesocolon, and contains the stomach, liver, and spleen. The infracolic compartment below the transverse mesocolon and contains the small intestine, ascending and descending colons. The infracolic compartment is further subdivided to right and left infracolic spaces by the mesentery of the small intestine. The transverse mesocolon, small bowel mesentery, and the sigmoid mesentery are all remnants of the dorsal mesentery, the dorsal mesocolon. The supracolic and infracolic compartments are connected to the paracolic gutters. This picture showing us the paracolic gutters, the right paracolic gutter, the left paracolic gutter. This is the root of small bowel mesentery. This is the right infracolic compartment, the left infracolic compartment, and this is the supracolic compartment. Plain film of the abdomen, radiological features of peritoneal spaces, plain film of the abdomen. Peritoneum is not visible on a plain abdominal X-ray, but in case of hemoperitoneum, air will outline the subophrenic space, or called air under diaphragm, and the falciform ligament, which is called the falciform ligament sign, or the umbilical ligament, which is called the urachus sign, or inverted V sign. This is a plain abdomen showing us the falciform ligament sign. This is the falciform ligament, which is outlined by air, and also there is air under the diaphragm. Ultrasound. Ultrasound is a good method in visualizing fluid collection in the right subhepatic and subophrenic space. Gas in the stomach will obscure visualization of the liver sac and the lesser sac and the left subophrenic space. This ultrasound of ascites. This is Morrison pouch and the ascitic fluid anterior to the liver. CT MRI. Peritoneal spaces and their ligaments are well visualized if there is a free fluid. Bare area can be identified as it lies directly on the diaphragm, whereas the remainder of the liver is surrounded by fluid. Ligaments usually contain fat as well as vessels. The greater omentum can be seen as thin fat-filled structure anterior to bowel lobes beneath the anterior abdominal wall. This is an axial CT showing us the falciform ligament. This is the right subhepatic space, or the Morrison pouch between the kidney and the liver. This is the lesser sac, posterior to the stomach and anterior to the pancreas. This is axial CT showing us the lesser sac. This is the lesser sac. This is the falciform ligament, and the right subophrenic space. Another CT scan showing us the region of the lesser sac, anterior to the pancreas and behind the stomach. This is an axial MRI showing us the right subhepatic space. This is the falciform ligament. This is the hepatoduodenal ligament, which contains the portal triad. This is the foramen of Winslow, which is behind the portal triad and in front of the IBC. This is the right posterior subhepatic space. This is the gastrosplenic ligament between the stomach and the spleen. This is the left posterior subhepatic space. This is the area of the lesser sac. The greater omentum, which is attached to the greater curvature of the stomach. This is the coronal MRI, showing us the falciform ligament, the right subophrenic space, the right paracolic space, the left paracolic space, the lesser sac, and the left posterior subophrenic space. Thank you.
عاشت ايدك.
تمام.
نختار محمد مهدي.
نعم أستاذ. The gastrosplenic ligament is a continuation of lesser omentum from stomach to spleen. False, دكتور.
False.
لأنه هو continuation of the greater omentum,
صحيح.
not the lesser omentum.
أحمد خليل.
نعم أستاذ. The falciform ligament contains ligamentum venosum in its free edge. False. Contain ligamentum teres in its free edge and then continues with the ligamentum venosum.
صحيح. نروح ليندا لواء.
نعم أستاذ. The phoneticocolic ligament is continuous with the splenorenal ligament. True.
صحيح. خنساء عبد.
نعم أستاذ. Hepatoduodenal ligament transport the portal triad. True.
صحيح. نروح إلى جازان.
The lesser sac is posterior to the pancreas. It is false. It is anterior to the pancreas.
Excellent. أكو بعد لو خلصن دعاء على.
نعم. The sigmoid colon is completely extraperitoneal. هو intraperitoneal. False.
False. Excellent. عاشت. أستاذ محمد حتى عندك بعد. أستاذ محمد كمل من فضلك. أستاذ محمد.
أستاذ معك. عمر فهمي نمبر 1.
نعم أستاذ. Falsiform ligament.
Falsiform ligament. زيد يوسف.
نعم أستاذ. The right subophrenic space.
Right subophrenic space. حيدر كريم نمبر 3. حيدر.
أستاذ تسمعني؟
إي نعم. Number 3.
Number 3 right subhepatic space.
رشا. Number 4.
نعم أستاذ. Portal triad within the hepatoduodenal ligament.
Number 5.
نعم دكتور. Number 5 left subophrenic space.
Number 6 زهراء صباح.
نعم أستاذ. Greater Omentum.
هاي أستاذ.
عايشة ايدك.